India's GDP has shrunk, contracted by an unprecedented 23.9% in the June quarter. This is the biggest contraction, biggest shrinking since the practice of quarterly GDP figures was first established in 1996. The previous worst phase was the first quarter of the year 2009 during the UPA government, but that was immediately in the wake of depression of September 2008, which started in September 2008. Now, the most worrisome feature of this is rather two features. One, that it is not just the GDP which is shrinking, which is contracting. Actually, concomitantly, the tax collection would also shrink. So there will be lesser revenue for the government. And the second feature, the second factor is that it is equally worrisome. The National Statistical Office, NSO, which publishes GDP data, it has pointed out, it has gone on record as saying that obviously this GDP shrinkage is because of the coronavirus pandemic and the lockdown, but the NSO says that because of this lockdown and pandemic, even their data collection mechanisms may be impacted. So which means that the actual figures may be more than minus 23.9, almost 24%. Now, let me elaborate this video editorial, this explainer. Friends, my name is Rajeev Sharma. Now, let me just give you a ballpark figure, how the Indian economy has been deeply impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. The worst hit sectors where the contraction was witnessed the most, the worst hit was the construction sector, 50%. And of course, the trade, the hotel industry, transport industry, communication, all these sectors declined by 47%. Manufacturing contracted by 38.5%. Well, the silver lining is, of course, automobiles sector also was severely hurt, but the only vehicle which seemed to be selling during this, in the wake of the pandemic are tractors, because agriculture is the silver lining, and agriculture is, in fact, now the automobile sales have zoomed up, have picked up, and agriculture is as I said, it is a silver lining because it has registered a 3.4% of positive growth in this sector, in the June quarter. And of course, another green shoot is the manufacturing sector is picking up. So now, what is GDP, folks? If I were to explain, because I'm sure that many of you would be UPSC and civil services aspirants. So in simple terms, what is GDP? GDP is a mix of private consumption expenditure. Number 2, the government consumption expenditure. Number 3, investments. And number 4, net exports. Net exports means exports minus imports. So it's a mix of all these 4 factors that comprises GDP. Now, because of the pandemic and because of the lockdown, the Indian economy was really badly hit. Now, India's lockdown was the most stringent. It was the stringent. It was the, I would say, it was the Indian lockdown was enforced more like a curfew. Now, some of you may not be knowing, but let me just tell you that there is something called stringency index created by the University of Oxford. Now, this stringency index rated India's lockdown as 100 out of 100, the maximum value the index could give. That is, right through the first half of April, when the lockdown was really at its stringent most. And after mid-April and up to June end, the stringency index created by University of Oxford has given India 80 points out of 100. So that also remains quite high. Now, then of course, important point is that this is the first time the economy has contracted, as I said, after India started publishing quarterly GDP figures. Now, a complicating feature here is the informal sector, which makes up over 50% of India's economy. Informal sector was hit the most by the lockdown. And of course, the lockdown, lots of confusion prevailed. What makes for essential goods? What are essential services? Because of that, the supply chain was completely broken. Now, this is apart from that. Now, let me come to the comparative analysis. If you see the leading countries, well, while India's economy contracted, GDP contracted 23.9% in the June quarter, in the corresponding period, Chinese GDP grew by 3.2%. Well, Chinese figures, nobody believes. They have always been first. So, but having said that, statistics are statistics. Now, let me come to the last part of this video tutorial. There are 9 countries whose contraction was in double digits. 2 of them, UK and Spain, are the only countries whose GDP contraction was over 20%. UK, for example, minus 21.7%, and Spain, for example, minus 22.3%. The other 7 countries to figure in this list of which are in the double-digit contraction of GDP, they are Germany, Canada, Singapore, Euro area, Italy, Mexico, and France. And if you talk of the US, the world's #1 economy, it also reported a contraction of 9.1%. So, but having said that, as I said, that we are seeing some of green shoots. So let us hope, and this also, let's hope for a better tomorrow. And this also calls for a second fiscal financial stimulus from the government. Thank you very much, folks, for watching me, and I hope you subscribe to my channel, Rajeev Kishkindha.